Hey guys, welcome to the Badaboom podcast. This is Chris.
And this is Troy.
And today, like our first episode of the podcast, we're finally talking Young Justice again. And it's a very exciting episode for both of us for many reasons, but something happened and I'm not going to say it yet. And I'm going to put a spoiler warning right now just because I was spoiled on Twitter and also by my dickhead of a co-host. but why don't you spoil it for the audience, Troy, like you did for me?
Yeah, I mean, I thought you would have watched it, but I also know I watched YJ before Moon Knight comes out, or I watched it before I even watched Moon Knight, so I'm always buying on Moon Knight, so you can always spoil Moon Knight for me. But Razor, if you have watched the animated Green Lantern series, makes an amazing guest appearance in this episode of Young Justice out of nowhere. Didn't think this was ever going to happen. And it's just so cool because there's never really been a Green Lantern character in any of the Young Justice teams because they've got the core. They've automatically got millions of mentors. So this episode was so unique and kind of special for Green Lantern fans. But also, like, this is the only chance I could think of that we would have a Green Lantern or any kind of lantern be considered part of a Young Justice kind of arc, really.
They teased it on a cool and interesting way. Like the way this season has gone on, it's been kind of like 3 to 4 episode arcs focusing on a particular character. And this one, we have Rocket, who is struggling, one, being a parent, and then two, being a really important part of the league and kind of leading negotiations between New Genesis, the Justice League, and the Green Lantern Corps around sort of their strategy, I guess, dealing with Apocalypse and Darkseid, metahuman trafficking that's been going on since last season. That first episode was really strong and they talked about the Lantern. And I thought, like, you know, they might send someone. And they do kind of send side characters. You got Tomari and Kilowog. And although they're very important, like it's clear they didn't put Hal or Guy or John just so that they didn't take too much focus off Rocket and her story. But what I didn't expect was, one, for them to show Razor, two, for this episode to basically be a Razor episode.
Yeah.
And then 3, for it to essentially continue his story from the Green Lantern animated series.
I thought that was long and dead. I was like, yeah, we'll never see Razor. He hasn't done anything in the comics, nothing. This is for me, it was a good sense of closure and also just a reminder of how much of a jerk Metron is.
Yeah. So kind of bringing that up, why don't you break down a little bit of the episode in terms of the story and stuff?
Yeah. So catch me if I miss something. They're actually doing the Peace Summit now. They arrived to New Genesis early in the first episode of the arc, and they sit down and they start talking. And I totally just messed up the first 10 minutes of the episode. The Green Lanterns are on the way, and you mentioned that they don't send Hal or Guy, and I was like, kind of like on your side for that. But then I was like, you know what? It wouldn't make sense to send a human lantern because that kind of might show some more bias on the negotiations. And so, like, you know, Kilowog and Tomari, they don't have a foot in the Justice League, so they're, you know, going to be a more accurate representation of the Corps' values potentially. But on the way there's a distress call that Kilowog and Tomari intercept, and it's Razor as a Blue Lantern, as we saw him at the end of the Justice League animated series. He's on his way back to New Genesis.
You mean the Green Lantern animated series?
Wait, did I say Blue Lantern animated series?
You say the Justice League animated series.
Oh my gosh. It's just, that's
too exciting. Too exciting.
Yeah. But they're on their way back to New Genesis. Our Razor's on his way back to New Genesis because he's given up hope and he wants his Red Lantern ring back that Metron is holding on to him so it wouldn't infest another soul and make, you know, just another Red Lantern. And Metron's being kind of a jerk, being like, oh yeah, I knew you'd come. And I've specifically put all this false hope out there to see how long you would have lasted as a Blue Lantern. And I knew you'd give up hope so I could study the Blue Lantern ring and give you the Red Lantern back. Which is kind of interesting because they do conclude that it has been 4 years since the animated Green Lantern series left off and where we are now. So we can kind of add some more stuff to the timeline of what might be going on with the lanterns that we haven't really talked about in Young Justice. And I feel like that's a whole other episode we can dive into later. But there's some interesting little tidbits of just why there's so many Green Lanterns on Earth.
Which was like the best line in the in the show. It was like I don't have the exact quote, but it was funny because Kilowog clearly has this feelings about Earth. But then, they're asking him, it's like, well, why is there so many Green Lanterns from Earth? And then he's like, he kind of has to admit, like, yeah, it's pretty hard to find qualified candidates. And Earth creates this specific environment where you have to always be able to conquer fear and have this willpower. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and I was like, man, that's a very positive way to frame a justice-deprived planet.
Yeah, it was funny. It almost felt like if you've ever really been at like a job where they ask you is like, hey man, you just can't find anyone better. He's like, nah, we just can't, man. He showed up for he's like, they showed up for the interview, so.
He got it, yeah. Which is true though, and like I think they do talk about that at a certain point in one of the Green Lantern runs. But while they're doing the negotiations and whatnot, pretty much everyone's telling Rocket, "We can't help you." And she gets frustrated. She gets a call saying that her son might be getting able to get some help with his autism, and she's talking to her ex-husband about it. And then boom, there's all these explosions, and it's Razor fighting Metron with his red ring. And Metron's trying to leave with the blue, but get all these readings. And eventually, Razor causes all of his destruction, and he sees Forager getting toppled over by buildings and all the debris that he's caused, and kind of reminds him of why he's actually trying to find Aya. And the blue ring seeks him out again, and he now wields both the blue and the red rings. And Metron leaves because he's kind of just pissed off, and also Razor makes him. He heals female Forager and recreates their statues to where it includes Forager and not just the new gods. And we get probably the best line from, oh gosh, what's his name?
Orion.
I always want to call him Ultron for some reason. From Orion, which is just, that's not the way it was before. And that will probably be his saving audio clip.
Yeah, sounds like the son of Darkseid, just always miserable and angry.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a great episode. Like even kind of going through the plot as you were talking about it, like what's really great about this episode is like, yes, it provides like this great fan stories and this continuation of that story that a lot of people love. But in the background, there's a lot of things going that's pushing along the larger arc in the season. You have Lord Zod, and you have the Legion kind of in the background in little tidbits, giving a lot of exposition as to what's going on and what might have happened to Connor. And when Connor ran into Zod that last episode, like what does that mean and kind of where we're going? Because, they've been very touch and go with that stuff. So you've really kind of had to like infer what a lot of this meant. At the end of last season, when you saw that Legion of Superheroes ring, you're like, oh my God, like, why is a waitress like putting that there? And it's clear they planted the seeds for this. And it goes back to what makes Young Justice really good. It's like, there's so much lore that is going on. Like it's expanding it, and they've changed some things. Also, even though it's like its own universe, it's found a way to kind of like bring in this other stuff like the Green Lantern animated series. And I'm just excited again for this is by far the strongest episode of the season. And I've talked to you about it. I kind of lost like my excitement around it because I did feel like it had gotten too much into kind of, people talking in rooms. It very much felt like that New Genesis, like conversation was every episode for the last season, and there very much wasn't a lot of those moments like the Razor moment or the moment where Lord Zod is talking about how they've been plotting this for practically thousands of years and they've been going to war with the Legion through different timelines and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I can't remember what number of episode we're on, but there's always like maybe it's about 2/3 of the way through a Young Justice season where they take like 5 minutes of an episode and they just explain, hey, this is what's going on. And this is why some of the stuff's been really important. I think of season 2 when they rescue Blue Beetle from the ship and Kid Flash, or not Kid Flash, Impulse is like, hey, this is why I came back to the past. And you're like, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense now. But this is probably one of the most strongest episodes we've had of this season. And there's tons of different things that we could talk about, like, what does this mean for Green Lanterns? Are they going to do the Blackest Night at some point? Obviously, it's like Young Justice, so it's like probably not. But it's just a really good episode for anybody that's a Green Lantern fan, because they have so many different little hints at the White Lanterns. Kilowog says, hey, next you know, you got blue and red. Maybe you'll be rainbow colored soon.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have some more closure with Aya in the future. And I don't know, is there going to be more kind of other parts of the DC universe maybe we've seen before come into Young Justice soon?
Yeah, we got a tweet where Greg Weisman, one of the producers and writers on the show, who's really active on Twitter, he had talked about kind of how Green Lantern, that show is adjacent, that universe is adjacent to this show. And someone asked, like, hey, is there any other animated things that are Young Justice adjacent? And he talked about the Green Lantern Showcase, which is a great animated short that is like, if you want anyone to kind of fall in love with Green Arrow and that character, you're just like, you don't show them Arrow, you show them that 10-15 minute short.
Green Lantern Starter Kit, first episode of Justice League Unlimited and Green Arrow Showcase.
Yep, exactly. And that's going to be exciting. I hope they do bring more of that. Obviously, like, what sucks is that we have no clarity if there will be another season of Young Justice. So as exciting as some of these possibilities are, like, I really hope we don't get like a big cliffhanger again and then like, oh, like we have to campaign again to get this show back in another 5 to 10 years. But hopefully with, the Warner Discovery merger, they see the value of having something like this. And it's clear that the team behind this has developed a world where you can really expand the universe in interesting ways.
True.
Like they can probably put together quicker a Green Lantern show than the people that have been trying to make a live action Green Lantern show since HBO Max was created. So it'd be cool to see that, especially like, it was so good to see Razor and Kilowog hug. I just wanted to be a part of that hug. And the fact that Razor was like, hey, tell Hal, like, say what's up to Hal. Like it just was such a great moment and really took me back to that show. And we've talked about kind of like going back and rewatching it for, an episode. And it's kind of crazy that out of nowhere we got this, like, it really felt like a gift. It's not even like fanslur. It's like, here's this great gift that I don't care if I really like the rest of the Young Justice season or, what's to come. I'm like, hey, if this episode is all I got or all I really loved, I don't care. It was a great season.
Yeah. It's such a good episode that people I know that do watch Young Justice who have kind of said, oh, it's not the highest thing on my watch list. As soon as I say, did you watch the animated Green Lantern series? Like, the character Razor? And like, oh yeah. Like, you just might want to watch the latest episode of Young Justice. And they're like, what? Wait, what was going on? Tell me more.
Yeah. So you spoiled it for more people is what you're saying.
No. I didn't spoil it for more people. I was just like, you remember this character, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you might just want to watch the newest episode of Young Justice. Like, I'm not saying he's in it, but I'm also not saying he's not. So it's great that it's piquing a lot of people's interest because that show had a larger lasting impact than I think most people realize. And to your point, let's have another Green Lantern show pop up at Warner Brothers Discovery. And I would hope, maybe it's live action, but I'm also totally down to consume any animated content that they want to push out. You can do a Green Lantern animated show. You can do an Arrow animated show. You can do any animated show you want. And as long as it's like taken seriously and maybe more adult themed, I'm like, yo, shut up and take my money. We
touched on the Lorzad thing, but like what's really interesting too is I'm excited to see them explore more of the story of what's going on with Connor. And
that's true.
You've been talking for years about kind of like bringing back Wally. And right now with the timelines, we got a cosmic treadmill.
Yeah.
Bart is like really seems like it's going to be really important the rest of the way. So it's like, not only could we possibly get back Connor, but we could possibly get back Wally this season. Or if not, as you said, you brought it up a little bit, like if they want to do Blackest Night, it seems like, hey, there's a lot of dead characters in this universe that can come back as a zombie. It's just exciting. It's reignited my excitement for the rest of the season. And it goes to show you sometimes, like, hey, like, when people are creating things, sometimes they might not take it in the direction you might have thought, like it would have been very easy to give us like that old Young Justice, but it seems like it's like, hey, this team is really good at like laying the foundation for things that eventually pay off. You just have to be there and kind of be open to it and stick with it, because you get this kind of payoff where you have something that, moves along the story, but is also like an amazing gift to the fans.
Speaking of being open to it, I was thinking about this when you were talking about Rocket's arc a little bit. I was like, Rocket has only really had like 4 episodes in the entire Young Justice series. Like, she comes at the end of the first season. She makes like 2-3 appearances in season 2. And maybe like 1 appearance in season 3. She's like not even really on screen hardly at all. Like nowhere near as the core team from season 1, because she gets added the last 2 episodes. And so this would have been a very easy arc to kind of write off. But I think the writers did a great choice, and we're bringing in new characters and developing some old characters and giving us some closure in some ways we hadn't expected through this arc. And now I'm even more excited to see how Rocket kind of handles some of the situations that have developed from these last 2 episodes.
Yes. And I think what's great is because she wasn't in the previous seasons that much, I think she had such a blank canvas for them to explore, whether it be around her son, her relationship with her ex-husband, her place in the Justice League, her growth as a character, her powers, that's something kind of like new and exciting, when Orion was kind of like using Mother Box, like, hey, I don't know this technology. What is that? And it shows that it's so open. You're like, oh, like she's going to really like kick ass these 4 episodes.
Yeah, I think she really is. And I think we're going to keep kicking ass here at the Badaboom podcast. We've got some good episodes coming up with Doctor Strange coming out in theaters soon. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. And give us a shout on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Let us know how you're feeling about Razor's appearance in Young Justice, and if you're just excited as we are, and what else you kind of want to see happen with the Lanterns or Rocket in this arc. And until next time, bada boom.
Bada boom.